to discuss what public-private partnerships can look like for the planet. And why I'm here, if you heard, I did study film and media, and a lot of people get really confused when they hear industrial transportation, government, film, and they go, there's got to be a story there. Well, there is, but it's a bit bigger than just me. Because it isn't just me. It's also the story about how manufacturers, engineers, businesses, and activists can all find alignment in a very significant way. And it isn't just Motiv Power Systems, while I wear our shirt. There's a variety of companies that are doing very similar things, trying to solve the question of what do we do to get rid of industrial emissions from our transportation sector. And it isn't just our industry, because I would be remiss if I forgot about the state of California and all of our policy leaders who have been working on that, NGOs and non-government organizations, scientists, lobbyists who are trying to advocate on behalf of the environment, activists who are going around their communities every day. And if you look at this list of folks who is in the plug-in vehicle collaborative, you can see that you have everybody from the largest automakers in the world to community organizers aligned in trying to solve a problem. Now that's an incredible thing, and it doesn't just happen spontaneously. It takes a lot of work. So how did we get there? Somehow in California, we managed to get executive leadership, legislative leadership, local small businesses, and fleets that have a multinational presence to all come into alignment to say we need to solve the question of how do we reduce emissions in transportation. So California is really unique because that doesn't just happen. And part of it is very dear to our history, which was in 1967, California created the California Air Resources Board because we had a major smog problem in LA. And this was before the Federal Clean Air Act. And that's a really important thing because what that means is, unlike every other state who follows the EPA guidelines, because we started first, we were grandfathered in. We got to keep that regulatory authority. So showing up first gave us an advantage of being able to create programs that don't exist in any other state and that other nations actually look to that they can't find in any of the other 49 states. And we've continued using that legacy of being able to set regulations in an ongoing way. Some of the more significant milestones, and this is really a small snapshot. So if you're in this space, I'm sure you can think of 40 other bills and programs that got us there, but this is just what established the framework. So in 2006, the Global Warming Solutions Act set a regulation that basically said CARB gets to develop both regulatory mechanisms and market mechanisms to reduce California's greenhouse gas levels to our 1990 levels by 2020. Now that was very significant because the ability to do both a market-based approach and a regulatory approach meant you had both a carrot and a stick to move the market forward, incentivizing both early adoption of solutions as well as making sure that those who are resistant to change can't keep polluting disproportionately. And we've built upon that framework. So in 2007, we created the Air Quality Improvement Program, and it created a program that eventually led to the creation of Motiv, which is the Alternative Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program at the California Energy Commission. Horrible acronym in terms of ARFVTP, not really something that rolls off the tongue, but a very effective program. And in 2012, we realized, okay, we need to scale this up, fine-tune it, and figure out what's working, what's not. And we put a few different bills into action, one of which, significantly, SB 535, established that a proportion of the fund is going to go into the most disadvantaged communities in California. So we looked at economic health as well as environmental health of these communities, and we said, where is the problem the worst? And we need to solve that first. And that environmental justice framework is very different than the way people tend to think about both regulations and investment. And just 2 months ago, we had AB 398, which said that we are going to extend cap and trade to 2030, establishing the stability of the program. And we also had a court case which said the mechanism is not a tax, and therefore it can continue without a 2/3 majority, but then we reauthorized it with a 2/3 majority, making sure that for the next 13 years, you are going to continue to hear about this program. So if you think I'm just talking history, no, I'm talking about an investment opportunity that could impact your company. So meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, where we are today, companies are founded to actually meet a market need and solve a cool problem because it's interesting. Most folks are not thinking about problems in places that they aren't. You'll see a lot of solutions for the thing that I see this problem here right now, I want to solve it in the coolest way I know how. So how do we get these folks to work together? Well, if we look at the stages of development, they're actually really remarkably similar, regardless of what technology you're looking at. So in your stage 1, you've got your R&D. Stage 2, you've got a demonstration or a proof of concept. Stage 3, you've got a pilot deployment, so small scale level deployment, make sure it works in a customer's hands. Stage 4, you're gonna get pre-commercial, so make sure you tweak it so that in addition to the technology working, the technology works as you want to deploy it into the market. And then stage 5, you've got your commercial maturity, you're gonna get your revenue from selling it, it's gonna be self-fulfilling. And in Silicon Valley, the way most folks think about investments, you have your Series A, B, C rounds, and you've got sort of later rounds and loans to scale up as need be. And by the time you get to stage 5 and commercialization, the market will support your company. You don't have to worry about getting investors. But in that early stage, between Series A and B, where you've got an idea, moving that idea into proof of concept, there's the valley of death. Something can just break, and if you don't have the resources, you're not moving forward. And between that first pilot where you get some data, real world feedback, and when you start to commercialize it, there's also another valley of death as you're trying to move it from this is feasible as a solution, but it's not market ready. And so there's those valleys of death where technologies can be developed to a point and then just fall off the marketplace. And we've seen a lot of research come and go where we'll hear of these amazing concept cars and then they don't go onto the streets. So how do we get around that? Well, that's not just a market problem. That's actually what the state is trying to solve as well. And so if you'll notice, this slide actually came from the California Energy Commission. And while it's really hard to read, underneath you can see within these cells, all of those are solicitations that are meant to address a very specific part of the technology development pathway. So for example, GFO 15-303, VGI R&D, says that we are going to invest in a solicitation to develop vehicle grid integration technologies at a research and development phase so that we can get the next stage of ideas to the point where you could get a Series B round. The idea being that whether you're coming into it as a small company seeking a pathway forward where investors aren't willing to step in, or whether you're seeking investment to get yourself to a point where a company's interested, the state wants to be able to push that forward so the technology isn't being stranded in academia, but is rather meeting the market needs and actually solving a real problem for our state. So where does Motiv come in? We know that these programs exist and we've really leveraged them because fleets want different things than what the state wants. So our mission as a company is we are trying to free fleets from fossil fuels. We want to get all industrial trucks and buses to stop using fossil fuels because we think it's bad for our air quality. It's a suboptimal technology solution, and we can really do better. But fleets aren't looking at air quality. They're looking at a purpose-driven industry, and they're trying to move goods from point A to point B, or people from point A to point B, or in the case of a bucket truck, get higher up in that tree. We want to make sure that there's a technology solution that can help them all. Right now, there's a variety of different vehicles using the Motiv powertrain, and the commonality is they're all using the exact same core technology. And the reason we were able to get there is our milestones in technology deployment mirror the same development that most startups and also what the Energy Commission wants to do. So when we were founded in 2009, we very quickly applied for a CEC grant and got a pilot project that allowed us to develop our prototype of our first powertrain. We launched that powertrain with the help of the Energy Commission and then started going into pilot rounds while also getting private investment, enabling us to go into a space where private investors said, we don't want to do a hardware company. It's so much more expensive than software. But we could still get enough resources to push the technology out of the lab and into the streets. And if you'll notice, moving forward, whether you're talking about our raising money, vehicle miles traveled, CARB pilot grants, or being showcased through for display, we have continually moved forward using the exact same pathway that the state wants. And that's a key benefit in that as a company, when you're thinking, why should I partner with the state? You want to make sure that your profit and investment signals align with the good you want to cause in the world. You want to open up as many investment opportunities as possible so that you're not stuck by one person's no. You can find a yes. And you can also move a lot farther if legacy players saying it can't be done isn't a barrier to your entry. It didn't matter that none of the industrial truck players were moving because as soon as they said, electric school buses can't be done and we came out with a model, it was really easy to say you're wrong. Also, there's a lot of benefits for people. For every dollar you spend reducing emissions, you get $9 in benefits in terms of public health improvements, productivity, and consumer savings. So if you're trying to figure out how you can align programs to create win-win scenarios, come talk to me. Thank you for your attention, and I'd love to discuss how we can help make sure that sustainability is part of all of our business plans. Thank you.